and 1 second off. So if I want to change it, I click here on the little key and it activates the editing mode. When I click the small little arrow, either up or down, and I'm currently positioned here, I can exactly set it to work with approximately 6 seconds in the on mode. This feature or functionality allows for precise control. I hit enter, sorry. It slipped out of my hands. The program I stop, again, switches. We are going to select 3, okay. There it was at 6, sorry. 0.6. I'm going to enter mode, division. I move the arrow, then I know what it is. I press 0, 6. It already has 6, and here I am going to put 0, 2. I press enter. I see the information to see how the program information turned out, and indeed, it was 6 seconds on and 0.2 seconds off. Doesn't work for me because the ratio is 3 to 1, meaning if it's 1 second off, then it's 3 seconds on. So let's go back to the switches. I select 3. Here I have the 6 seconds, that's fine, but here it's set 0 to 2.2. So that's 3 seconds on, so let's go back to the switches and select 3. Here I have the 6 seconds, that's fine, but here it's set 0 to 2.2. I go back, set it to 0, 2, I press 0 again, and now it's set at 2 seconds. When I hit enter, it tells me it was done. I go into program information to see if it stayed at 6 seconds on, 2 seconds off. So it has now taken the manual settings that I'm establishing. I go back, set it to 0, 2, I press 0 again, and now it's set at 2 seconds. When I hit enter, it tells me it was done. I go into program information to see if it stayed at 6 seconds on, 2 seconds off. So it has now taken the manual settings that I'm establishing. I click on satellite again. I still have the satellite capture. When I hit enter, it tells me it was done. I go into program information to see if it stayed at 6 seconds on, 2 seconds off. So it has now taken the manual settings that I'm establishing. As I proceed to click on the satellite option once again, I find that I still have the satellite capture available to me. Let's wait for it to start its cycle. I have to hit enter and it begins its cycle. Let's pause for a moment, because this always takes its course time, although folks, it's already programmed. In this case, I reconfigured it to 1.5 seconds on and 0.5 seconds off. Indicates that the interruption is activated, so I'm going to proceed to the different ways to connect the switch to the rectifier. I already know that I don't have it programmed, so I'm going to connect the switch now. This means that I need to take a few extra steps to ensure everything is set up correctly. First, I will double check the connections to make sure they are secure. Then, I will proceed to configure the necessary settings to ensure the switch operates as intended. This process might take a little time, but it is essential to guarantee that the signal is transmitted to the controller, and as I mentioned earlier, it has additional information about the process. Its solid state output clearly identified its positive and negative, so negative with negative, and positive with positive, and indeed, definitely. I want to check if the switch is really interrupting with a multimeter in continuity. I check just to ensure if it's working. There's a whole audible signal for when there's continuity and when it was open continuity. Open. I check the ends of the switch. In this case, it's not giving me a signal. Let's set it to resistance. This is solid state, it's not working for me. This switch isn't activating. I'm going to have to use another one that I have. Okay folks, now that the equipment is set up with the interruption programming, in this case, 1.5 ohms and 0.5 ohms, I'm going to proceed to connect the switch in series. The switch has its two wires. If I want to interrupt by disconnecting the negative wire, this negative wire usually goes to a negative distribution box, and the positive wire goes to a positive distribution box. For example, this would be a positive current box, which is a positive current distribution box where the positive wire would be connected here to distribute. So I can disconnect one of the ends of interest from here, connect it here, and the other end I'm connecting to the wire that I'm releasing from the rectifier. So in this case, I'm going to do the example by disconnecting the negative wire. How do I connect in series? I disconnect the negative cable, one end from the switch, connect it to the switch, and the other end of the switch to the terminal I am disconnecting. So, notice that the switch is opening the circuit, meaning it stops conducting current. This is happening for 1.5 seconds on and 0.5 seconds off. I'm doing it with a negative wire, but I can also do it with a positive wire. It doesn't matter which one I use. This is useful for making instant off potential measurements for CIS with short intervals, potential measurements over short intervals, and even for DSBG, which is used in much shorter cycles, like 0.7 seconds off and 0.3 seconds on. This is how to interrupt the system. Now I'm going to do it from the positive wire, so you can see that there's no difference. With this again, the negative from my load, and I'm going to disconnect the positive now to maintain the series circuit. The current continues through here. It will enter through this end, and the current will now travel through here and will exit through this other end. We are going to connect it there. We have our interruption now done from the positive cable. But it happens that our equipment, in this case, let's suppose that this equipment works with up to 50 amps, and that this equipment, the rectifier, is taking out 80. I already know that I can't connect it because it will burn out, it will get damaged. But we can resort to our connection strategy. We can interrupt the AC source. How would we do that? We already know, when we gave the identification plate from here, that in the AC source it can work from 8 amps and a maximum of 18 amps. So I know that this equipment will have the capacity to handle that amount of current. That in the AC source it can work from 8 amps and a maximum of 18 amps. So I know that this equipment will have the capacity to handle that amount of current. Okay, so how exactly would I safely interrupt the AC power? I can also place it in series here. For safety reasons, since the electrical voltage is involved, I'm going to carefully disconnect this bridge. I remove this bridge. I already know it's in position 2. So I need to keep the connection in the same position to ensure proper connection, and safely to ensure safety. I connect one of the switch points to the central connector, which would be this one, where it says T0. To ensure there is absolutely no false contact whatsoever, I carefully and meticulously place the other component in position 2, making sure it is secure and stable. Next, we proceed to activate the rectifier, and we thoroughly check and verify if it is causing any interruptions or disruptions in the system. It is important to notice and observe that it also interrupting the power, AC, which is the AC power, is the one that arrives at the AC-DC converter, also the outlet. Notice that the voltage goes to 0, indicating that I'm dropping the voltage and I'm achieving an interruption. This way, I would protect the equipment. I know that here I'm not going to handle more than 8 to 18 amperes, and the equipment has capacity. Up to 40 or 50, depending on what the manufacturer tells me. If the manufacturer says it only supports 60 amperes, I already know that if there are more than 60 amperes at its output, I can't use it at the output, but I can use it for the power supply. I can also do it here. Let's see. I want you to see that it works too. Obviously, I disconnect the fine adjustment and restore it because Soledad is currently on the adjustment. It goes back and restores the adjustment, but not in the position it didn't have. And now I'm going to do it, but interrupting the course adjustment. Let's see if we can achieve the cut. I decided to connect the central current in position 2 because it was originally set in that position. This choice was made to ensure consistency and maintain the intended configuration of the system. By doing so, I am able to preserve the original setup and avoid any potential issues that might arise from altering the established arrangement. And activate. This function is also working through the other adjustment. It means I can do it from here, I can do it from here. I can do it by disconnecting the negative cable and connecting it in series, disconnecting the positive cable and connecting it in series. And there's another option which would be interrupting the input C. This is the secondary winding, but I can also interrupt the primary winding. What would I have to do? I'm going to disconnect one of the cables that supplies power here. I'm going to get a pointer. As you can see, if we look closely, two cables come in here. I can release one of these ends and connect it in series too. And I could also interrupt it from the zero input, as long as the switch has the capacity. At least here 120 volts are coming in. So if the equipment tells me to test up to 240 volts in this case, I can also do it over there. So this is the methodology for installing the programmable satellite switches. As I was telling you, gentlemen, the other equipment as well. The same connection principle applies to the other equipment, the equipment I showed you earlier. Connecting is exactly the same, just that this switch, notice that it was still searching for satellites and hasn't found them yet. Until it finds the satellites and syncs up, it won't allow me configuration options. This equipment can also do manual configurations, just like the other one. But this one doesn't. This one does show when I press here. You need to get familiar with the equipment because it uses a lot of codes and abbreviations. And some of those indicators are shown here. But it's not that easy for the inspector in the field to realize if this equipment is properly programmed or not. This is the blur of this equipment. This one is a bit more user-friendly. It can be configured annually, just like the American innovation. But well, it's the same for both. You need to get familiar with the equipment, with the operation manual of the equipment. The connection is, as I explained to you, that yes doesn't change. Everything is connected in series, whether it's through the positive wire, the negative wire, or the secondary winding, or through the antenna power input. This one is also installed in series, but remember that this one is not satellite. And it's not programmable either. It already has factory programming with some cycles that come pre-programmed. But this is for a specialized piece of equipment, which is the one from CVG, to evaluate the quality of the coating. Again, gentlemen, I hope this has been useful to you. This video is so we can continue complementing the operation of the other equipment. Once again, I invite you, gentlemen, to like my YouTube channel and subscribe to it so you can receive updates every time I upload educational videos. And for the algorithm to I also hope that YouTube helps this video reach the people who need this kind of information and guidance. I appreciate any questions or comments, so please feel free to reach out to me via YouTube. Until next time, gentlemen.